Ladies and gentlemen, to the Female Founder Summit contribution today. Thank you very much, JP, for having us as cooperation partner this year. It's a great honor for us.
A pleasure for me.
So the Female Founder Summit is an association Carol and I founded in 2016 with the aim to foster networking among female founders and to connect female founders at a very early stage to investors. We've done that with our own summits every year, and this year we have the pleasure to cooperate with various partners, among others the Startup Days. We are very happy that today in the panel we will have one female founder that actually pitched at the first Female Founder Summit in 2016. And now I hand over to my co-founder, Carol.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. We have today a keynote by Olga Meiler, about 12 minutes of your time that's going to take, followed by a panel which is going to elaborate in more detail about what Olga is going to speak about. Olga is a marketing and innovation expert. She ran the UBS Unique Innovation Program for UBS Wealth Management, and she's the gender lens investing expert. She will speak about why it is important to invest in women entrepreneurs, because diversity matters and because it is good for profit. Olga, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, awesome energy. So I changed a very stubborn 150 years old organization with these pair of glasses. I'm going to put them on. They are the diversity glasses. And just have a look across the room. This is actually the most diverse room I've seen in the last 3 months. But then I was in Russia, right? So it's probably not that hard to top. I was told that there are roughly 35 nationalities here at the conference, a variety of industries, and we see a fully balanced room. It's absolutely great and a pleasure to speak here. I will speak to you for roughly 13 minutes about how you can use diversity as a strategy to expand and grow your business. And it is relevant for all the men in here because it has nothing to do with gender. What is the number one priority of a startup? Yeah, the number one priority is actually to survive, first and utmost. And once you have survived, to grow, and from an investment perspective, yes, to exit and make it actually a good exit. Well, here are a couple of guys that actually prove to do this rather well. And the big question would be, what do they all have in common? N26, just recently voted by LinkedIn as one of the hottest startup in Germany. Accenture, Slack, Google AdWords, Roche, L'Oreal. What do they have in common? These guys have in common that in one form or the other, they use a pair of glasses like I hold in my hand and actually embed diversity. Now, if you ask Google AdWords, product manager was a woman. These guys have a very smart strategy to play around, and we will speak about Roche later. So diversity seems to be a topic. Now, there are different forms how you can play diversity. You can apply age diversity, industry backgrounds, cultural diversity, academic background, you have it. BCG studied this. From the 6 factors that you see here, which ones do you believe are the top 2 that actually help to boost innovation and boost returns? Take a wild guess. Gender diversity. Anybody else? Any wild guesses here? Industry background. Any other votes? Age. You're absolutely right. Actually, the top 2 were industry background and gender balance, followed by age. And this is a very interesting study because what BCG has found out as well is that it's not only about that you have a certain adherence to diversity, but you also need to reach a certain threshold. So it doesn't work having one token older person in your team. You actually need to have multiple of them. Same applies for industry backgrounds. Why is this important? Well, we discussed before, right? And I heard this today in the investment panel as well. Credit Suisse studied this. 20% premium return on equity if you have 20% of women. This is for tech companies. 15% for all the other companies. 4 to 15% better dividend. Hey, who wouldn't want to have 4 to 15% better dividend? And you will tell me and say, hey, Olga, we are startups, this is listed companies, they studied 3,000 listed companies, give us a break. Well, it was heard, first round capital, already mentioned today, 60% value increase by diverse companies, and they started this 10 years back, not just 2 years. So there seems to be a very distinct business case for adhering to diversity. Now, what are the top 2 things to adhere to? Because you are startups and one is very busy. Actually, there are only 2 things. If there were 2 things that you wanted to do differently tomorrow, it would be a very close look at your customers and a very close look at the team. The customers, well, every startup is well served solving a problem that people actually want to pay for. And it's very important that they want to pay for it because otherwise you can't grow. What has happened to me? Well, I was blindsided. I didn't believe my own data at the age of 29 when I funded my first venture. It wasn't that successful because yes, I solved the problem, but nobody wanted to pay for it. So look at the data and understand the data. Now, data about who? It's not China or India that is the biggest consumer market on the planet. It's actually going to be women. 8 out of 10 purchasing decisions are influenced or taken by women. They live longer, they make more money, increasingly and increasingly. They will require health services, financial services, whatever have you. The likelihood that your future pay for customer is at least influenced by a woman is therefore very, very high. Understanding this target group, therefore, for you as a startup is absolutely key. And if you are an investor, at least probing the question and say, did you test this solution actually also maybe on some older women or women? Might be a good idea. Product design, therefore, embedding enough diversity there. It doesn't mean that you need to be a female-funded startup, but you need to embed diversity in product design and getting sufficient amount of feedback. Has happened in UBS. The tech team came to me and say, oh, Olga, thank God. Now we know why our app is actually not being used. We never tested it on women. Well, great. So we fixed that. Well, second thing, we heard it today. Investors invest predominantly in early stages into the team. Now, what does happen in a startup? Well, you're very busy, you start on your own, right? And then you get a couple of people to help you. And as the startup grows, you get more people to help you, and they all are recruited through, obviously, your network, your colleagues' network, etc. What can happen very, very easily if you don't pay attention to it is that you end up with a monolithic culture. And once you reach 10, 15, 20 employees, it happens what happened to a friend of mine who came to me and said, Olga, can you not come and join me? I am 3 years old. I am super successful. I finished my series, my next series of financing. I realized I only have men in the company. And I looked at this startup and I go like, okay, this is going to be interesting because I'm going to be the odd one out. And I'm not sure if I want to do that. So the top tip here is make it a priority from the go. And again, don't get hooked up about, I need a female co-founder, I need a female founder. Just ensure that your recruiting network is balanced enough. Second thing to do is to have a neutral hire process. And you might believe your hire process is neutral, but look closely at the images you display, at the language you use, at the verbatim you use. I worked for 10 years in financial services. Guilty as charged, right? I mean, that's the industry with the biggest acronyms on the planet. You need to look at this closely, challenge yourself. And then, if you can't, there are a couple of alternatives how to get diversity in. Your advisory board, your non-executive board, your customer sounding groups, your suppliers. You can demand from suppliers that construct your tech that they actually put a balance team behind it, because in the end you are paying them to do that, right? This was the example of N26, which I actually like very much, because they are two male founders, and look how they play the diversity game to position themselves to be a modern company. Actually, it is an advantage still. I mean, it's sad to say, Carol might not like it, but it is an advantage still to position yourself being diverse. Now, why does this matter at scale? It matters at scale because the financial services industry underneath is starting to use diversity data to construct financial products. This is Equileap. They are an organization that does public research on 3,000 listed companies, and from there they construct an index. Equileap doesn't look just at women in boards, but they actually look alongside 18 criteria of diversity. Along Equileap is also Bloomberg, Thomson Reuters, so more and more transparency is being provided. With that, indices are being used to craft financial products. And the moment financial products are being crafted, all of you can invest, and investing is the most powerful vote we all have, right? So what I found quite striking is looking at the 3,000 companies Equileap analyzed and the country split of that. Switzerland somehow sits under others. And I think we are a very innovative nation with a lot of capital. And it is a powerful room right here that we have the means to change that. How? By popping out these 3 questions. When you leave the room, these are the 3 questions to ask. Is diversity a priority? If you are an investor, just probe the startups. If you are a startup, just ask yourself, has enough diverse customer feedback being gathered? And finally, can the diversity strategy be used to reach out to future growth? Broader segments, bigger networks, additional sources of funding, positioning advantage. I would love all of you, if you take away one thing from these past 15 minutes, to look at diversity as an opportunity to grow and not a constraint thing that actually limits your ability to act. Funding a startup is probably one of the biggest adventures you can ever do. And I would, with that, invite you to use the power of the diversity glasses to get there. Thank you, and good luck.
I hope this wine will help to diversify your wine cellar.
Thank you, absolutely. Thank you so much.
It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not in the driver's seat. If I'm not mistaken, I'm out of this. No. Let me. Can you change? Yeah, I will give it to you. Can you change? Yeah, it's me. Here is a mic. Okay.
2 mics, 1 mic. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barbara Fischer. I'm the founding partner at Arena Ventures, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's panel. So if I can just invite the panelists to come up on stage and maybe also take a chair. Okay, if you want to come up, and Thomas.
All right. You take your own chair. Hi.
All right. In the middle? Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should take maybe Thomas in the middle. So
Ciao, Thomas. Das ist eine mutige Sache.
Yeah, he's not on a slide because actually I'm going to tell you the story how Thomas is super spontaneous. So before we start with the panel discussion, I wanted to suggest that I'm going to introduce the panel, and I'm going to ask then a couple of questions, and then we open the floor to discussion and questions with the audience. So Olga, thank you very much for your inspiring talk. I think I don't need to introduce you anymore. Carol has done that very well. Then I start with Thomas. So I tell you the quick story. We were supposed to have Laurent Roux on the panel today, but unfortunately he couldn't make it in the end. So I was actually sad that it would be a panel with all females. And when I came here from Zurich today on the train, I met Thomas. He was in the same compartment on the train. And I said, you know, Thomas, it's actually pretty sad because we are all females. And he was kind enough to suggest that he would join us spontaneously because he has a lot to say in terms of startups and a lot to say about, he's an angel investor. First of all, he's the president of SICTIC, which is the Swiss ICT Investor Club. Also, and he's going to tell an interesting story about how he has worked in a very diverse team, probably as diverse as it gets, but I'll come to that later. So welcome, Thomas. Eike Festini. So it is rare to have a female founder. Statistically, and I think we all know the stats, only 10% of all startups are founded or co-founded by females. In Eike's case, it's actually even better or even more females because she actually has a co-founder. Welcome also. And they started a company based in Winterthur called Lucabox. Lucabox is a business in the log tech space. So for people who don't understand the abbreviation, log tech is logistics tech. So in the logistics space. And I wanted to congratulate you, Eike, and also your co-founder on 1 year Lucabox, right? You started last September, if I remember correctly. So congrats on that, and also congrats on already within that 1 year raising your first round. I think that's really inspiring, and you can tell us a little bit more about that and how you are building a very diverse team in a moment. Yeah, then we have Luz Ramirez. She is actually coming from Madrid in Spain. She is a venture capitalist, and I now need to, sorry, I'm going to actually look at my notes for the accolades, but she has a twofold background. Number one, she's a computer engineer with a master in advanced technological studies from NZ in Toulouse, and she also holds an MBA from IESE Business School. Luz was a fund manager for a venture capital fund. She was also has experience in the fund of fund manager business with EIF, and she's the founder and managing partner of Red Capital Partners, which is actually focused on founding companies that are led or co-led by females. So they are investing in all over Europe and in Israel. And welcome to you, Luz, and thanks for making it all the way from Spain. Yeah. So I wanted to basically open the session with a question, or one of the many questions I have. But Olga, you said that Switzerland, and actually it's not just Switzerland, but many European countries claim that they are innovation hubs or that they are super progressive, okay? And in many areas they are. It depends what you define as progressive or as innovative or innovation. But when we look at politics or the corporate sector, or like today at the startup and venture capital space, it is quite astonishing that there is both in the venture world, I think it's about 9% globally of all venture capital partners are female. Then as for the rest, I don't know the stats, but also for the startup side of things, there's about 10% of all capital goes to companies that are founded or co-founded by women. And that's obviously, I could name more depressing stats and so on, but actually I wanted to have this panel to talk about the positive side of things. And since Olga speaks a lot about the topic, I wanted to start with you first and ask you, because you have just said you've been to Russia lately, you've been to the Nordics. Can you tell us about a couple of countries that you have seen where you see the gender topic, and I'm not just talking women, I'm talking about the diversity topic being played out differently or more progressively than in others?
Absolutely. So it's the countries that drive for the most transparency, right? If you look at how they support Canada being one, it's like in a company, right? Somewhere the CEO starts to be vocal, and then there are guidelines and things around to provide data transparency and look at certain standards. So Canada is very good. All the Nordic countries are very, very good. Then you have the more difficult animals like Russia and China, where actually diversity is a no topic. Officially, it is a no topic because of the cultural heritage and the equalization in society. Whereas, if you look at the statistics, everybody can read the WEF report where Russia ranks in terms of gender diversity standards. What can we learn from those? It's the countries that have the biggest, I would say, adherence to provide transparency. It goes back to the plumbing, to the data. When you have data and you have tangible evidence on pay gap or on funding standards or on number of startups, you can start managing this data, you can start taking affirmative action. And I think this is where we in Switzerland maybe might have a little bit of catch up to do. Not that the data wouldn't be there, but it's not fully consistent and it's definitely not publicized to the extent. It's all kind of a voluntary thing. Iceland made a good experience with voluntary, but then they are a smaller country, right? So I would push very strongly for transparency and data.
Okay.
Hi, I totally agree with you. And actually, there is a report that was actually published October last year. It's called Project Sage. It was published by Susan Wiegel, which is one of the most well-known gender lenses women in the world. And actually, the report says that there are 58 gender lenses funds in the world, and 47 of those are in the US. So the US, I think it's like in many cases, above Europe, and it was very interesting to see that the rest of the funds were not actually based in Europe. I mean, there is Latin America and also Asia who is actually above us. So,
and why do you think that is?
I think this is the 1 million question. I think that I totally agree with what Olga says. I think it's a question of looking at facts, looking at numbers, and making decisions. I think, on a positive side, I think that things obviously they're not ideal, but I think that this trend that is studied in the US, it's also coming to Europe. I'm personally, in the process of launching this fund, which, as you previously said, we're going to invest in companies funded and co-funded by women. And I must say that I'm very bullish about the whole process. And I think that both entrepreneurs and investors are really welcoming initiatives like this. So I think it's got a trend. It's unstoppable. And yes.
I'm interested in a very pragmatic sense because currently I think you're about to close the fund or in the process of funding. Can you share with us one or two stories that you have had talking to investors into the fund? Like, what's the reaction like? Because you've just said that there's very few of these funds in Europe. There's many of them. I've seen some in Singapore also. There's many of them for sure on the East and West Coast. But what are your experience? Tell us a bit.
I think that in our case, it's not, it's a fund that is not just about gender lenses. It has to have a professional team behind. And this is why we have a diverse team, men and women working together. And there is a lot of years of experience, good track record, and an investment strategy that makes sense. So it's not just that they are more open about this kind of funds, but also because I think that the mix with professional people leading this project is making not only those investors who are, let's say, more sensitive about this social thing about gender and supporting these kind of diversity teams, but also investors, they are completely commercial oriented and they're just looking for numbers. Olga mentioned some of the reports, and there is obviously, unfortunately, there's not a lot because, as you know, this is a very quite recent topic. But more and more we have studies that says that, diversity actually makes sense from a financial point of view because it's shown in the last line of the P&L. And so at the end of the day, investors want to see that. And if you can do good and do well, I think it's a win-win situation.
Perfect.
I just really add quickly to that. When we were establishing the UBS product on gender equality with this investment hypothesis, the first comment that we heard was there will be no market for it. Nobody will want to buy this. And therefore, there also was a rather slow sales process. Actually, nobody was pushing this product, and it made 150 million in 7 months, which I think shows that there is demand. People want to invest with this lens. But But until you get there, it is a very, how would I say, stubborn way to get there. So we need to cocoon the funds, we need to cocoon these type of investments in Europe in order to make them scale and grow.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Talking about the startup perspective, can you share a bit about your journey the past 12 months with Lucabox and how it is to build a diverse team, and whether you did that very consciously or if it developed organically? Or
Yeah, I was just thinking about how to best answer this question. We have a very diverse team. We have my founder, my co-founder is female. We have a female on the board of directors. We have 4 female investors invested in the company. But it's not that I chose any of this. It really organically grew. We have 4 nationalities. We have ages from 26 to 45 in the team. It's 3 women. The rest is men. It really is. I think the co-founders' outlook and experience and lens that we have on the world, which is we grew up in several countries. So I think we have a very diverse outlook ourselves. So in terms of fundraising, I'm often asked, was it harder for you because you're female? I really would have to say no. I'm very close to many male CEOs who do the fundraising, and it's a struggle no matter what gender you are. It's tough. I think some investors prefer to invest in females, but I also think some don't even look at me because of that. Some investors question our numbers triple the times that they would with a male founder. I'm sure of that too. Yeah, I don't care. The investors that want to invest in us, they invest in us because they believe in the team, they believe in our numbers, and I think they're pretty good. So yeah, we've now just opened our second round. It's a lot easier this time, and I think I'm also yeah. Let's see. It's going really well so far. So, but it's not a gender issue in our team for us.
Okay, excellent. Thomas, maybe you can talk a bit from an investor's business angel perspective, and when you look at a startup, like what are the things that you are looking at? And
So first of all, I think gender is definitely an interesting aspect, but for me, it's really diversity of where the people come from. I like a lot to work with people that have very different origins, like people that came to Switzerland just for doing their master's or PhD, but they lived in Brazil or Argentina or really far away. They took a big risk to come here. They know what it means to take a risk. They cut their roots. They don't have a safety net. And those people have much higher ambitions, and they are much more willing to take risks than somebody that grew up here in a comfort zone and could always go back to his nice bed and the parents, and everybody helps him if it doesn't work out on the very first day. And so I like a lot of people that showed that they take a risk, people that have a lot of perseverance, and people that can really prove that they can do it. And unfortunately, I've studied computer science. DTH is like 10% women. At Carnegie Mellon IT department in the US, it's 50% women. It's basically half-half. And so either it's a cliche here, that the teachers tell people you cannot go to maths if you're female for some reason, or the physics teachers are mostly teachers, male teachers and not female teachers, and they somehow have this cliche that they convey that you need to be male to do whatever hard science or physics or maths or computer science, even though it's not true. So a lot of those things are maybe just very fundamental here. So I really look for those outliers that took a risk, that took a step. If you're a female founder, it's much harder because you have to much more explain yourself. Why are you doing this? Why don't you have kids instead? I mean, I really hear this a lot. Like, if you're a founder, if you get pregnant, then who runs the startup? I mean, who's here then? And that's so stupid. I mean, this is our very old role model that she's at home and he's working, but that's not fun. I mean, it's much more fun if both can do what they like and what they're good at. But I hear this a lot, especially in Switzerland, that we have these role models and you cannot fix them because all the politics and all the social security system is meant to be having separate roles. And it's really hard to switch. When I go to school, I bring my kids to school sometimes. I say, oh, is your wife sick? Why didn't she bring the kids? But, hey, come on, what's wrong with you guys? Of course I can bring my kids to school. I don't have to work every day, and I can also do stuff that normally, apparently, a woman is meant to do, which is so much, it's really sticking to our heads here. And we need to break this up, and if I work with diverse teams, I feel I get better feedback. They bounce it among each other much better. They make it much bigger, faster. if I only work with males, white males in a specific, only engineers from one university, I mean, they will not have so much creativity than diverse teams. So I really like work with diverse teams, whatever gender or origin they have.
Yeah,
it's actually a thing I look for.
That's interesting. And can you share, you told me before a little bit about your experience at Google, because Thomas used to be one of the first team members at Google. And anyway, you can maybe tell the story yourself.
So I joined Google in Zurich 2006 in January. There were about 40 people, mostly salespeople. I was the first software engineer in security. And so they sent me to Mountain View, to California, did the boot camp there 3 months, came back here. I was the first engineer in my first team. I was responsible to make sure we built something great. And then they said, how many people do you want in a team? I said, yeah, of course, maybe 10, 20, that would be good. So half a year later, I had my 10 people. And they, from the very beginning, made diversity a big priority. They said, we want to hire people from all over Europe. And the reason was that we did not find enough people in Zurich. It had to be from all over Europe anyway. Second thing was they wanted to have a lot of people which had very different types of educations, not just PhDs, but also people that came from a very different area moved into that space because they have very different ideas how to solve problems. And of course, also having more female people in engineering was a big priority, but there were almost none of them in Switzerland because ETH has this 10% computer scientists, and that's not enough. And then they had some of them, and then they wanted to promote that they actually have female engineers doing software engineering, so they had to make some promotion. So that meant they asked people for showing up in a video or on the pictures, and then some people got really sick of that. Like there was a really charming female software programmer, she was really super smart, but she refused that she would be in the pictures. And I said, but that's stupid, because now you're in Zurich and you're like the role model. And said, yes, but being female doesn't qualify. Writing great software, that qualifies. I don't want to be judged by my gender. That's really stupid. You basically take something out which I have nothing done for it. It's just the way it is. So I don't want to be the female role model. And it was difficult, of course, because they needed those role models, but some people didn't want to be that. And so Google was growing very quickly in 7 years, from 40 people to 1,400 just in Zurich. And they had 71 nationalities just in Zurich. In my team, the last group I was the tech lead of, we had 80 people in Zurich and in Munich and very few in California. We had 21 nationalities. German and Swiss German was not a common language. We had to speak English all day long. There was no way. Everything from the very beginning was in English. Otherwise, we couldn't communicate with the diversity of people we had. So it was really, from the very beginning, it was very important, yes. And I enjoyed it a lot. I learned so much about new cultures. Sometimes I didn't understand them. I mentioned this episode where I had a Ukrainian guy. He was a very smart engineer. When I talked to him, he always looked at my feet. And I kind of, what's wrong with him? Is he not interested in what I'm saying? And then one day I asked, why do you always watch my feet? I don't have such nice feet, maybe, but what is wrong? He said, if I were to look into your eyes because you're my boss, that would be insulting. In my culture, I cannot look somebody in the eyes who is a superior guy because that would be basically an affront. I couldn't do that. So that's why I have to stare at the floor. And for me, it was like, he's not listening. So it was a big culture clash.
Interesting. We have about 10 minutes left, so I have got one last question for each of you. And then we are going to open the floor. So Olga, and the question is the same for everybody actually. So Olga, if you could wish for one thing to change in either Switzerland, Swiss startup or VC landscape, or Europe for that matter, what would it be?
I think if I had one wish was that every investor just pops the question around diversity. If we all did that, the capital, the signal we would send towards founders, community, other VCs would be so enormous. It would be one of the most powerful votes that we can express. I'm just advocating that each VC, angel, family member, whatever, just asks the question around diversity and whether that is a topic in a startup.
Okay, thanks. Ruth, what is it that you...
It's actually quite aligned with that. One might think that gender plays no role when investing in startups, and unfortunately, it's not like that. Investors like me, we should make decisions based on financial projections and business plans, but there are prejudices and there are cultural bias that even like women, like VC managers, we also have those bias. It's not just men. So my wish would be that both entrepreneurs and investors, they will be aware of those biases and to get rid of them, because I think we're losing like amazing opportunities.
But how can you get rid of the bias? I mean, without the data. Talk about emotional stuff. Like, I mean, there's data, of course, and then how can you?
I was actually like 3 weeks ago, I was in Tel Aviv. It was in the DLD event. It was a technological event, very well known over there. And I was doing a presentation about diversity. And I was actually, because this is why I have this fund, because I think it's an untapped market and there's great opportunities, okay? It's about returns, what I'm doing, apart from like the good and positive side, but I think it's about returns. And I've been collecting information, reports, you know, from like BCG, Harvard Business Schools, and all these guys that they have done studies. And it's impressive, the data that you get there. And I think the most important thing is to, and this is what I'm doing actually, showing all these things with men and women, with investors and entrepreneurs, because you cannot avoid being asked certain questions differently if you're a man or a woman. You can't. But you have to be aware of those biases and then change, you know, how you're going to answer those questions, because that makes an amazing difference, you know. I'm not going to go into details because it's going to be very long, but when you are aware that they're biased and you know it, and you can recognize this, and you have tools to try to change that. And I think that sharing and you know, all those studies will help people to be aware of those things. You know, it's about letting people know this happens, so try to avoid that. You know, like you were saying, like, question yourself, am I, you know, I'm neutral in my questions, am I doing these kind of things right, you know? So I think it's about sharing all that.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually had a discussion over lunch about this topic. How much of, you know, female panels and platforms and forums do we need? I have a split opinion about this. Part of me wished we wouldn't need it. Another part of me, now that I'm hitting 40 or past 40, actually understands the importance of role models, simply because there are many, many brilliant women out there who have a lot to give to the society and simply don't dare. And I think that's why platforms like this or the Female Founders Summit are amazing for those. They're probably sitting and then are like, should I not? Yes, you should, damn it, you know? There's no difference, just go for it. And I think that's why we need role models and why we still need platforms. I don't believe we need a quota.
Yes, the quota discussion comes up again and again. I don't think it's actually supporting that more women will do it, because if in the end people that are not qualified do it, it will be a big boomerang. I rather want to have the best qualified people in the best positions, and doing that, the best means to get there is if you have great people that do it, we just showcase them better, we tell better stories about them. So I rather want to have more of these lighthouse cases that they have done it. This woman has really achieved it, even together with having a family, for example. That's much more enticing than say, okay, now we need so many percentage of women, otherwise we don't fulfill the regulation. It's not helping anyone. Actually, it's even punishing women, because then it's saying, you only made it because of the quota, you would never qualify otherwise. And that's like a double bad sign. So I'm definitely against quotas, but I'm for promotion of those people that do it.
I want to do a test. Who in the audience is in favor of quota? And who is against quota? Okay, so it's about 1/3, 2/3. Interesting. So, Thomas, I'm going to ask you also, though, about your wish. If you could change one thing about the startup scene, I will ask you specifically for Switzerland, because you're a mover and shaker in Swiss startup scene. So what would it be?
So my wish is more on the investor side. I want to have more female investors. We're working on that, but it's really tough, even if people are interested, to look at the cases. There's always lots of reasons why they wouldn't do it, or why they choose criteria very differently. So if you know women that actually want to become investors, doesn't mean you need to be a millionaire. You can start very small. So I'd love to get connected to them. And also our board, we have 4 female members in our board. You can talk to any of the women in the board. If you don't want to talk to a guy, please approach them.
And can you, maybe since you're talking about female investors, can you talk a little bit about what their commitment needs to be, like, or what they have to do, or what they don't have to do, whatever?
So with us, it's very simple. It's 20,000 for one investment, and you can take 2 years of time to decide which one you want to invest in. We don't force you to invest. We just want to connect you to the others that have done it. And you can look at whatever, 10, 20, 100 startups, and you make a decision on your own. So 20,000 is the minimum investment per startup if you do it through our club. So that's all it takes. Just do it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to open the floor to all of you. Are there any questions or any comments or anything that we should discuss? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take this one. What could special prizes, awards for female founders help the issue as opposed to quotas? Yeah. Eike, you want to take that?
Gave me the microphone. I do have something to say on this topic, because we've been at an event this year that was focused on female innovators or female startups. The prize was coaching, and that I found was very funny, because if in a normal event like today you win money, and actually it's money that we need. If we win these prizes, we probably did something already and achieved quite something already. So please help us with money. Of course, help us with coaching. But I mean, that's something that Switzerland does really well. We're really very, very well coached on all levels. If you want, you pick your coach. It's very, very good in Switzerland. But if it does, it will help with money.
Okay, what is preventing Switzerland, among other European countries, from creating, promoting and enforcing equality for parental leave? Oh.
I'm Spanish, so I cannot answer this one.
Because there is equality, you are saying?
No, but it was just my way to get out of that question.
But what does the situation in Spain look like? I'm curious.
I think it's the same. I mean, it's like the same everywhere. It's very difficult to conciliate both worlds, especially for women, but also for men who want to also go and pick up the kids in the school. So that I actually have no clue why this is not happening, because I think that more and more men and women were asking for this. But somehow there are some initiatives and some corporates, they are working on that. But I don't have the answer to that question, I'm afraid.
Would you like to have a view on it, Olga? Because you were for 10 years or more even with UBS. And how was it there?
Well, we had Swiss standard. So maternity leave and paternity leave, I guess to me it never occurred, right? I have 2 children. I think the biggest challenge in Switzerland is the society, is what you mentioned, right? My kids come home from school and somebody says, the other mommies don't work. But I think that's not the topic of the discussion here, to discuss the paternal, policy of Switzerland. What would be great is if culturally we were able to embrace women who work and men who stay at home. I think that would be great. So we don't have to deal with these questions. Like, I'm looking at Thomas and myself, right?
Just a quick note. I mean, it's currently debated apparently on the parliament level again. Most people say it's too expensive if you give also men so much vacation. I worked at Google. I had 2 weeks of parental leave for me. Normally it's 2 or 3 days by law. Not sure. I think it's 3 days. So more or less you don't miss births if you do the regular thing, which is terrible. You cannot really stay at home. Now, basically, any employer can do it. You can implement it tomorrow in your startup if you want that. What I would find would be a good solution is if you give a certain number of days to both of them, man and woman, not just to one of them. And they can split themselves in between. That would be a good solution in my view. Like in Sweden, it's 1 year, and they can pick and choose between who does how much at home. Austria is the same, so that's a great model. I hope we can adopt that someday.
I want to add to that I believe that diverse teams like men and women working together, they are the best. But also you have to be a little bit more flexible. You have to give flexibility. because otherwise, like questions like this, it's very difficult to answer. Nevertheless, the commitments and the results and everything else is amazing. So I think we should be a little bit more flexible, and that will allow, men, women, do just, all the stuff, just not working and taking care of personal life, family, or, whatever.
Yeah, but this is definitely changing with startup life, I think. In that world for sure, I see a lot of flexibility.
And actually, in my fund, I'm actually doing that. We decided that we wanted a diverse teams, and we wanted like the senior investment professional to be women, exactly because they are not. So it's more difficult to find them, but we have an amazing team, and I'm actually trying to be, and I'm actually being flexible with them because some of them they have kids. And so I'm actually applying this to my own fund, and so far I'm super happy about that.
Okay, excellent. Good. So I think we'll take some questions from the audience. Are there any more comments, or otherwise I've got yeah.
Sorry for that. I think it's a shame that we talk about equality and parental stuff, because in the end, we have a stage full of experience, and wouldn't it be to talk about what you've done in order to get you where you are? Because I started my own company this year, and I want to hear from you what you've learned, what your lessons are, what your tips, etc. are. And I don't want to hear about conservative SVP background in the Swiss market, because we take the opportunity. So what do you do? And maybe for you, the question, Eike, is what do you do to push yourself and to just jump and see what happened?
Yeah, no, thanks. It's a very good
What did I do? You mean before I started the startup? To get started? I actually went through a serious crisis in a large corporate. And I was very lucky to be doing an MBA at IMD with a strong support from the network to actually, I wasn't the only one in that crisis, but it became very apparent to me that I've been doing what everybody just told me I'm good at. And that was for the first time that I thought, okay, now I'm actually going to do what I want. I was 37 at the time. It took me a long time to actually reduce my fixed costs from my high-paid salary to be where I am today. But I've never been as happy. It's been very courageous, but I've never been as excited every day in my whole life.
That's awesome. And I think it has deserved an applause. Come on. Yeah, so Olga, share a little bit also, maybe share a bit from a mom's perspective. What is it that you did, or what are your secret tips and tricks?
Sorry, I can't share anything from a mom's perspective, but similarly, I changed a large bank, and then I think majority of people know I jumped. Same as you. The reason why I changed the bank was because I wanted to know whether it can be done, actually. I just wanted to know whether there is a strong enough business value proposition that change can happen. And I jumped. And since I jumped, I'm the happiest person on the planet. So I think it's probably the conscious decision that this will make you happy, and knowing why you do it, that will provide you all the energy to go through all the obstacles, the pitches, and finding the money and writing the concept, and whatever you are doing is this inner conviction that I think is probably that carries the furthest. And maybe to your question, if I had one recommendation to anyone here in the room, I think it's just act. Most people overthink it. Just start doing it.
And if I might say, I would
applies for the kids.
Just do it for the kids, okay? Yeah. Let's just finish this one, because you have a thought on it.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. So I'm going to add to that. It's not just the doing it, but I think it's also equally important and super critical, at least for me, to surround yourself exactly with the right people. It starts with your husband. Do a good partner check, Because if that person doesn't support you 100% in what you're doing and isn't your biggest fan, you will have a really hard time, okay? So luckily, I've got the best husband in the world who is also happens to be my biggest fan. And this is actually, Arena Ventures is my second company. I used to have a digital consulting firm in Sydney, Australia for 7 years that I built and exited it. But I can assure you, without my husband being there mentally, being my bank, I always call him Emile, my bank, because he is my bank sometimes. I mean, not anymore, but then he was. I could for sure not have done it. Also, in terms of children, we have 2 small children, 6 and 10, and we never had any family around. So if you don't have that, my advice would be have somebody who is like a third parent. You need to really, that other person is so critical for the children. And if you can't be there all the time, and as an entrepreneur you cannot, like it's a fact, like you spend at least 100% of your time or a good portion of your time in your business, and your husband is also not there, you need to have that third person. And finding that right person is also critical from my experience now with 2 businesses. Yeah, that's. I think that's about it. Like, and actually, yeah, 1/3 and last point. You know how they always say, oh yeah, there's only 10% female founders, and there's not so many women in venture. And that comes back to my point of surround yourself with the right people, right? To me, I can assure you, the world does not feel like there's only 10% of women. Really not. In my world, it doesn't. Because I'm surrounded by fantastic investors, fantastic people in VC and so on, fantastic startup founders and so forth. And for sure, that world doesn't feel like that. So it's also your perspective on how you choose to look at the world. Either you can say to yourself, okay, I wear the glasses. No, but also, like, really, I mean that. Be mindful, be very mindful. For example, 2 years ago, I stopped reading the news, okay? The news. Because, and I can assure you, it hasn't had any impact on my business or whatever, or people don't think I've gone stupid or whatever. But I don't read the news anymore. I don't even listen to them. I don't watch them. I am very mindful of what goes into my brain. So attitude has a lot to do with it also. That's all I have to say about it. Amen. So could an approach, female supporting other women, help the system to change perspective on how women are valued in the workplace? Okay. How should I understand the question?
I think the way I understand it, I mean, we had at UPC, at my former employee, at my former employer, we had a female mentoring system, which I think I think that's where the question is going, and that was a great opportunity for actually being with senior executives. I mean, there weren't many, but those that were there helped me a lot in my career back then. And that's actually what I would add to what you just said. Don't only look at who you're surrounding yourself with, find the right mentors. And find those that have already achieved what you want to achieve. I think that's really important. Does that answer?
Yeah, there's another question. I'm going to come to you.
Hi. So thank you for sharing all of this. I was missing one piece, and I would like to get your perspective on it. Actually, many women make the choice to go entrepreneurial, many more than men, leaving corporate jobs to being a contractor, which is what I've been doing for years. And it wasn't until I ran into things like the Female Founder Forum, and InnoSuisse has some programs, and I saw entrepreneurs on stage, and it's like, oh, I can take this further. But I had been an entrepreneur for years, and it actually was my way of living through the small years of my children, because it gave me flexibility. So some of the things you said actually sort of startled me, because it sounded much more corporate than what I had lived coming from the entrepreneur. For me, it was just logical. I was going to continue to use folding what I've been doing as a contractor into a company, but with the same thought of flexibility. So what would you say to women coming out? out of that contracting space and launching into a startup way, right? Because that was, for me, was the kickoff, was somebody saying, well, why are these women not making their companies? Why are they getting by on these consulting careers?
I think if you're a consultant, you already have an entrepreneurial spirit to a certain degree. You do not have the security that you have in a corporate position. I think you're already halfway there. But then taking the plunge to actually taking responsibility over a whole team is a whole nother level. So.
Yeah, and just as a general comment, I think going from contractor to entrepreneur, whatever the setup is that you have for yourself, if you have small children, I think it's awesome, you know, to have that flexibility to either say, okay, I don't take on 100% of business, but I actually go at 60%, and the other 40% I spend with my children because it's a choice, but then scale it up again when you feel you are ready for it. I think that's great. This is what entrepreneurship is. You can, I mean, in a perfect world, you want the traction line to go up and up all the time, but sometimes it plateaus for a little while, and that's okay too, I think. Okay, so unless there are any further questions, I say thank you for your attention. Are there? Yeah, no. Yeah, see you at the next panel or wherever else you're off to. Thank you.
Thank you.